There are places that look perfect from the outside, places everyone wants to enter, but no one really understands. Hair Palace was one of them, the most famous salon in Lagos, the kind of place people saved for months just to experience once. But behind the shine, something dark was growing. Customers kept fainting in the salon. The apprentice discovered the reason. The wig slid off the customer's head and landed on the floor with a soft thud. Nora watched in horror as the woman's eyes rolled back, her body swaying like a palm tree caught in a storm before she collapsed right there in the styling chair. The other apprentices scattered, screaming, knocking over combs and hair products in their panic. But Madam Serah moved with an eerie calm, stepping over the chaos like she had done this 1,000 times before. She pressed 2 fingers against the woman's neck, counted silently, then looked up with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "She'll be fine," Sarah announced, waving her hand dismissively. "It's just the heat. Someone get her some water." Nora stood frozen by the sink, water still running over the hair she had been washing moments ago. This was the 3rd customer to faint this month. The 3rd. And every single time Madam Serah had the same reaction, the same cold reassurance, the same unsettling calm. Something about it made Nora's stomach twist into knots, but she pushed the feeling down. She was just a 17-year-old girl from Ajagunle, one of the poorest neighborhoods in Lagos. She had no business questioning a woman who had built an empire from nothing. She had no right to doubt the woman who had given her the opportunity of a lifetime. Hair Palace was not just any salon. It was the Salon, the kind of place where governors' wives came to get their hair done, where celebrities flew in from Abuja just to purchase the premium wigs that had made Madam Serah famous across Nigeria. The prices were outrageous, the waiting list stretched for months, and the quality of the hair was unlike anything anyone had ever seen. People said the wigs looked so natural, so alive, that you could swear they were growing right out of your scalp. They said Madam Serah had a gift, a blessing, a special touch that no other stylist in the country could match. But there were other whispers too, quieter ones, the kind people shared in hushed tones when they thought no one was listening. They said Madam Serah's success was too fast, too sudden, too impossible for a woman who had started with nothing but a plastic comb and a dream. They said her special hair oil had strange ingredients, things that couldn't be found in any market. They said the wigs felt different somehow, like they had a weight to them that went beyond mere hair, like they were alive. Nora had heard all the rumors before she applied for the apprenticeship. Her mother had begged her not to go, had clutched her hands and pleaded with tears streaming down her face. "That woman is not normal," her mother had said. "There is something wrong with that place. I can feel it in my spirit." But Nora was tired of being poor. She was tired of watching her mother work herself to the bone selling akara by the roadside, tired of wearing the same faded uniform to school, tired of dreaming about a future that seemed impossibly far away. She loved hair. She had been styling her neighbor's hair since she was 12 years old, transforming worn-out weaves into works of art with nothing but her 2 hands and a burning passion that refused to die. If she could learn from Madam Serah, if she could master the secrets of Hair Palace, she could change her family's story forever. So she had ignored her mother's warnings. She had applied for the position, aced the interview, and walked through those glass doors with her head held high and her heart full of hope. That was 3 months ago. 3 months of sweeping floors, washing hair, fetching supplies, and watching Madam Serah work her magic on customer after customer. 3 months of learning, growing, and slowly climbing the ranks of the most prestigious salon in Lagos. And 3 months of strange occurrences that she kept trying to explain away. The fainting was just the beginning. There were other things, too. Smaller things that she noticed when she was alone with her thoughts late at night. The way the wigs sometimes seemed to move on their own, shifting slightly on their mannequin heads when no one was touching them. The way certain customers looked different after their visits, somehow older, more tired, like something had been drained from them. The way Madam Serah disappeared into that locked room at the back of the salon every afternoon, emerging hours later with new batches of her famous hair oil, her eyes glittering with something Nora couldn't quite name. "You're imagining things," Nora told herself firmly as she mopped up the spilled water from the day's latest fainting episode. "You're just tired. You're just stressed. There's nothing wrong with this place." But deep down, in a place she didn't want to acknowledge, she knew something wasn't right. The confirmation came 2 weeks later, on a slow Tuesday afternoon when the salon was nearly empty. A woman walked in, not through the front door like a regular customer, but through the back entrance, moving quickly like she was afraid of being seen. She was one of the loyal customers, a wealthy businesswoman named Mrs. Ades, who had been buying wigs from Madam Serah for years. Nora recognized her immediately, but something about her appearance made Nora's breath catch in her throat. Mrs. Ades looked terrible. Her skin, once glowing and radiant, now hung loose on her face like it belonged to someone 20 years older. Dark circles surrounded her eyes and her hands trembled as she grabbed Nora's arm and pulled her into a corner. "I need to talk to you," Mrs. Ades whispered urgently. "Quickly, before Sarah comes back." Nora glanced around nervously. "Ma, what's wrong? Are you okay?" "No." The word came out like a sob. "No, I am not okay. I haven't been okay since I started wearing that woman's wigs." "What do you mean?" Mrs. Adaz's grip tightened on Nora's arm. "Listen to me carefully, my daughter. I know you think I'm crazy. Everyone thinks I'm crazy now, but something is wrong with those wigs. Something is very, very wrong." She leaned closer, her breath hot against Nora's ear. "Ever since I bought the premium wig, the one Sarah makes in that locked room, I have not been the same. I sleepwalk now. Every night I wake up in strange parts of my house, doing things I don't remember. My husband says I talk in my sleep, but it's not my voice that comes out. It's someone else's voice, something else's voice." Nora felt ice crawling up her spine. "Ma, maybe you should see a doctor. Maybe—" "I have seen every doctor in Lagos," Mrs. Adesi's voice cracked with desperation. "I have seen pastors. I have seen imams. I have even gone to traditional healers. They all say the same thing. There is something attached to me, something that came with that wig." She pulled back and stared into Nora's eyes with an intensity that made Nora want to run. "I'm telling you this because you're young, because you still have a chance to get out. Please, my daughter, find out what is inside those wigs. Find out what that woman is doing in that room before it's too late, before she does to you what she has done to all of us." Before Nora could respond, the sound of heels clicking on the marble floor made them both freeze. Madam Serah was walking toward them, her face arranged in that perfect mask of pleasant professionalism that never seemed to slip. "Mrs. Ades," Sarah exclaimed, spreading her arms wide. "What a lovely surprise. I didn't see your appointment on the schedule." Mrs. Ades's face went pale. She mumbled something about just passing through, practically ran toward the back exit, and disappeared into the afternoon heat. Madam Serah watched her go with an expression that Nora couldn't read, then turned to her apprentice with a smile that felt like a warning. "Don't mind her," Sarah said softly, placing a perfectly manicured hand on Nora's shoulder. "That woman has always been a bit unstable, too much money and too little sense. Now get back to work. We have a busy evening ahead." Nora nodded obediently, but her heart was pounding so hard she was sure Sarah could hear it. She spent the rest of the day in a daze, replaying Mrs. Ades's words over and over in her mind. Sleepwalking, strange voices, something attached to her. It sounded insane. It sounded like something from a horror movie, not real life. But then why couldn't she shake the feeling that it was true? The second warning came 3 days later, and it was even more disturbing than the first. Nora was taking out the trash in the alley behind the salon when a figure emerged from the shadows, making her scream and drop the garbage bag. "Quiet," the figure hissed, stepping into the light. It was a young woman, maybe 25 years old, with haunted eyes and a scar running down her left cheek. She was dressed in worn clothes, nothing like the glamorous attire of Hair Palace's clientele, and she kept glancing over her shoulder like she expected someone to jump out at her any moment. "You don't know me," the woman said quickly. "But I used to work here. I was an apprentice just like you. 3 years ago." Nora's eyes widened. "What happened to you?" "I left. I had to leave." The woman's voice broke. "We all left eventually, all the girls who worked there. Because of what we saw, because of what we learned about that woman." "What did you see?" Nora whispered. The former apprentice grabbed Nora's hands, her grip desperate. "Don't trust her. Whatever she tells you, whatever kindness she shows you, it's all a lie. She's not what she seems. That salon is not what it seems. If you stay too long, you'll see it too. And by then, it might be too late." "Tell me what you mean," Nora pleaded. "What did you see? What is she doing?" But the woman was already backing away, shaking her head. "I've said too much already. She has eyes everywhere. If she finds out I came here, if she finds out I warned you—" "Please." Nora reached for her, but the woman was gone, vanishing into the maze of alleyways like a ghost. Nora stood there for a long time, trembling in the fading light. 2 warnings in less than a week. 2 people telling her the same thing. She couldn't ignore it anymore. She couldn't pretend everything was normal. She needed to find out the truth. The opportunity came sooner than she expected. A Saturday, the busiest day of the week, when the salon was packed from morning till night with customers demanding attention. Madam Serah was overwhelmed, running between styling stations and barking orders at her staff. And by closing time, she was visibly exhausted. "Nora, lock up for me tonight," Serah said, tossing her the keys. "I have an important engagement I cannot miss. Make sure everything is secure before you leave." "Yes, Ma." Serah paused at the door, fixing Nora with a look that seemed to pierce right through her. "And remember my rule. You don't stay after closing. You lock up. You go home." "Understood." "Understood, Ma." Serah nodded and swept out the door, her heels clicking against the pavement until the sound faded into silence. Nora stood alone in the empty salon, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and determination. This was her chance. She moved quickly, locking the front door and pulling down the blinds so no one could see inside. Then she made her way to the back of the salon, past the styling stations and storage rooms until she reached the door that had haunted her dreams for weeks. The locked room. The place where Madam Serah made her special oils. The room that no apprentice was ever allowed to enter. Her hand trembled as she reached for the doorknob. The metal was cold against her palm, cold in a way that felt unnatural, like it had been chilled from the inside. She pressed her ear against the wood and listened, humming. Soft, rhythmic humming was coming from inside the room. But that was impossible. Serah had left. Nora had watched her go. There was no one else in the salon. Slowly, carefully, Nora turned the knob. The humming stopped instantly, cutting off mid-note like someone had pressed a mute button. The silence that followed was worse than the sound had been, thick and heavy and suffocating. The door was locked. Of course it was locked. But Nora had an idea. She had seen Serah put the master key in her desk drawer once, had watched the woman lock it away with the careless confidence of someone who never expected to be disobeyed. Moving on legs that felt like they belonged to someone else, Nora walked to Serah's office and began searching. She found the key in the second drawer, hidden beneath a stack of invoices. She also found something else, a list of names written in elegant handwriting on a sheet of ivory paper. Women's names, dozens of them, each one crossed out with a single red line, each one except for one at the very bottom of the list. Nora. Her own name stared back at her, uncrossed, waiting. Her blood turned to ice in her veins. She grabbed the key with shaking hands and ran back to the locked room, not caring any more about being quiet, not caring about anything except finding out the truth before it was too late. The key slid into the lock with a click that seemed to echo through the entire building. Nora pushed open the door. The smell hit her first, a thick, cloying mixture of something sweet and something rotten that made her gag. The room was dark, lit only by dozens of candles scattered across the floor and shelves, their flames flickering in a non-existent breeze. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and writhing like living things. And then she saw them. Hair bundles. Dozens of them, suspended from the ceiling on lengths of red thread, swaying gently like bodies hanging from a gallows. Calabashes lined the shelves, their surfaces coated with dark oil that gleamed in the candlelight. Photographs covered one entire wall, photos of women that Nora recognized as customers of the salon, each image placed beneath a burning candle, each face marked with strange symbols, drawn in what looked like dried blood. In the center of the room sat a large brass bowl, filled with what could only be hair soaked in dark liquid. The liquid was thick and red, and as Nora watched in horror, it seemed to pulse, to move, like it was alive. "Oh God," Nora whispered. "Oh God, oh God, oh God." She forced herself to move forward, to examine the evidence of whatever nightmare she had stumbled into. A notebook lay open on a small altar near the bowl, its pages filled with Sarah's precise handwriting. Nora picked it up with trembling hands and began to read. The words made her stomach turn. It was a recipe of sorts, but not for hair woe. It was a ritual, a detailed step-by-step process for binding a customer's essence to the wigs they purchased. According to the notebook, each premium wig contained not just hair, but a piece of the customer's life force, their beauty, their vitality, their youth. The wigs drained them slowly, feeding their energy back to the shop, back to Sarah, making her rich while her customers withered away. And there was more. The final pages described a special ritual, one that required a young apprentice, someone with pure intentions and untapped potential, someone who had entered the shop willingly, who had signed a contract, who had agreed to serve. The ritual would bind this person's entire future to the shop, ensuring its prosperity for another generation. Nora's eyes found the date written at the bottom of the page. Tonight. The ritual was scheduled for tonight. "I see you found my private workspace." Nora spun around, her heart stopping in her chest. Madam Serah stood in the doorway, her elegant figure silhouetted against the darkness of the hallway. She wasn't angry. That was the worst part. She was smiling, that same calm, controlled smile she always wore, like Nora had just done something mildly amusing instead of uncovering her darkest secrets. "Madam, Nora's voice came out as a squeak. "I didn't mean to." "Yes, you did." Sarah stepped into the room, closing the door behind her with a soft click. "You meant to snoop. You meant to discover things that were none of your business. But I suppose I can't blame you. Curiosity is natural. It's what makes us human." She moved closer, her heels making no sound on the floor, as if she were gliding rather than walking. "You want to know what all this is? I'll tell you. I have nothing to hide, not from you. Not anymore." Nora backed away until she hit the wall, the rough brick pressing into her spine. "Please, please, just let me go. I won't tell anyone, I promise." "Oh, Nora," Sarah's voice was almost tender. "You sweet, naive child. You think I would let you go, after everything you've seen." She stopped a few feet away, her eyes reflecting the candlelight like twin flames. "I was like you once, you know. Young, poor, desperate. I came from nothing, just like you. I watched my mother struggle, just like yours. I had dreams, just like yours, and then I learned the truth about this world." She gestured at the room around them. "Success doesn't come from hard work, not real success, not the kind that changes everything. It comes from sacrifice, from understanding that everything has a price and being willing to pay it." "You're insane," Nora whispered. "I'm practical." Serah's smile widened. "A spiritualist taught me this ritual 20 years ago. She showed me how to harness the energy of others, how to channel it into my business, how to build an empire that would never fall. And it worked. Look around you, Nora. Hair Palace is the most famous salon in Nigeria. I have everything I ever wanted, all because I was willing to do what others wouldn't." She reached out and touched Nora's cheek, her fingers cold as ice. "You could have that too. I chose you for a reason. You have potential. Fire, the kind of ambition that can't be taught. Join me, Nora. Learn my secrets. Become my heir. Together we could build something even greater." Nora slapped her hand away. "I would rather die." Serah's expression didn't change. "That can be arranged." She moved faster than Nora thought possible, grabbing her wrist and twisting it behind her back. Nora screamed, thrashing wildly, but Serah was impossibly strong, dragging her toward the brass bowl in the center of the room. "The ritual requires an unwilling sacrifice," Serah said calmly, as if she were explaining a hairstyling technique. "Your fear will make it even more powerful. Don't struggle too much. It will be over quickly." Nora's eyes darted around the room, searching for anything she could use as a weapon. Her gaze landed on one of the calabashes, half filled with dark oil, sitting on a shelf just within reach. Without thinking, she grabbed it and swung it at Serah's head. The impact was sickening. Serah staggered back, her grip loosening just enough for Nora to tear free. She didn't look back. She ran. The back door. She remembered seeing it during her first week, a service entrance that led to the alley behind the salon. She crashed through the hallway, knocking over shelves and equipment, Serah's enraged screams echoing behind her. "You can't run from me," Serah shrieked. "I own this city. I own you." Nora hit the back door at full speed, bursting into the cool night air. She didn't stop running until she was 3 blocks away, her lungs burning, her legs aching, tears streaming down her face. She called the police from a payphone, her hands shaking so badly she could barely dial the numbers. The officer who answered sounded bored, dismissive. "You're telling me a salon owner is using black magic to steal customers' os?" He laughed. "Young lady, go home and sleep. You've been watching too many Nollywood movies." "I'm telling the truth," Nora sobbed. "Please, you have to believe me." But the line went dead, and she was alone in the darkness. For 3 days, Nora hid. She stayed with the distant aunt in another part of the city, afraid to go home, afraid to show her face anywhere near the salon. But she couldn't stop thinking about the notebook, the photographs, the list of names. She couldn't stop thinking about all the women who had been harmed, all the lives that had been drained to feed Madam Serah's empire. She had to go back. She had to get evidence. She waited until midnight on the 3rd day, creeping through the alleys until she reached the salon. The building was dark, seemingly abandoned. Using the key she had kept in her pocket, Nora slipped inside and made her way to the ritual room. She worked quickly, her phone camera flashing as she documented everything: the calabashes, the photographs, the notebook, the hair-filled bowl. She found Serah's laptop in the office and copied files onto a flash drive. She even managed to capture video of the Wigs moving on their own, shifting and swaying in the candlelight like restless spirits. When she emerged from the salon an hour later, she had everything she needed. The police might not believe her, but the internet would. She uploaded the evidence to every platform she could think of: social media, news websites, community forums. Within hours, the story was everywhere. Hair Palace exposed, Apprentice reveals shocking ritual practices. The evidence was undeniable. The video of the moving wigs went viral, shared millions of times by people who were horrified and fascinated in equal measure. Journalists descended on the Salon. Former employees came forward with their own stories. Customers who had experienced strange symptoms finally had an explanation for their suffering. The pressure became too great to ignore. When the authorities finally arrived at Hair Palace, they found exactly what Nora had described. The ritual room, the evidence, everything. Madam Serah was arrested in her home, dragged out in handcuffs while cameras flashed and reporters shouted questions. "You don't understand," Serah screamed as they pushed her into the police car. "I did it for them. I gave them beauty. I gave them confidence. This is how the world works." But no one was listening anymore. The aftermath was long and complicated. Medical experts examined the customers who had purchased premium wigs, finding elevated cortisol levels and other stress markers that suggested their bodies had been under prolonged strain. Psychologists worked with women who had experienced sleepwalking and dissociative episodes, helping them understand that they weren't crazy, that something real had been affecting them. The wigs themselves were destroyed in a ceremony witnessed by dozens of victims. As the flames consumed the hair, several women reported feeling lighter, freer, like chains they hadn't known they were wearing had finally been broken. Nora became something of a celebrity, though she never wanted the attention. News programs interviewed her, magazines featured her story. Young people across Nigeria looked up to her as a symbol of courage and integrity. But she refused to capitalize on her fame. She refused to become another person who profited from others' suffering. Instead, she went back to school. She finished her education, earned her styling certification, and opened a small salon in her own neighborhood, a place where poor women could get their hair done at prices they could afford, where there were no secrets, no locked rooms, no rituals. Just good, honest work. She never forgot the lessons she learned at Hair Palace. She never forgot the terror of that night, the feeling of Sarah's cold fingers on her skin, the desperate scramble for survival. But she also never forgot the power of speaking up, of refusing to be complicit in evil, of choosing integrity over opportunity. Sometimes, late at night, Nora would sit in her little salon after closing and think about all the young girls out there, girls like she had been, desperate for a chance, hungry for success, willing to do almost anything to escape poverty. She would think about the predators waiting for them, the people who would exploit their dreams and feed on their ambitions. And she would remember Madam Serah's words. Success doesn't come from hard work. It comes from sacrifice. She was wrong. Success does come from hard work, from persistence, from refusing to take shortcuts, even when they're offered. Real success, the kind that lasts, the kind that doesn't destroy you from the inside out, can only be built on a foundation of integrity. The glamour was a lie. The luxury was poison. The shine was borrowed from shadows. Not every success is worth admiring. Not every luxury deserves envy. Some empires are built on suffering. Some beauty is stolen.